This conference will now be recorded.
Hello.
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 Yeah, Kunnagar, I can hear you.
Hi, Jyoti. How are you doing today? How?
Yeah,
I think I don't want to. Okay.
yeah. And now I got used to it.
All right. Okay. So, like exception handling today, we would like to discuss.
Uh-huh.
So, what is an exception? What do you know about exception? Uh, yeah, Jyoti.
When we're running a program, we might come across some errors in our normal flow. So if we want the program to run in a normal flow instead of breaking unexpectedly, we use the exceptions at places where we feel the code might go out of our normal flow. Something like array out of bound exceptions, or at the runtime when you give division by zero, something like that. Like we have
Okay.
checked and unchecked exceptions.
Okay.
So whatever we think might throw an error or exception, we put it in the try block, and then we catch it using a catch block.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Wonderful.
Mhm.
What is a checked and unchecked, and what is compile time, and what is a runtime?
Uh, Runtime is after the compile time, like when we give inputs at the when the output is coming, it'll ask for some input, that is unchecked exceptions that we don't have control over. Whereas checked comes into the normal program when we write at the compile time,
Okay.
which
So
I
check
mean we have a
exceptions
chance to
raised
modify.
at the time of compilation. The exceptions raises they are called checked exceptions, and the exception which raises at the time of program running. After compilation, we have a running phase. So when you run the application, they'll raise that exception. Can you give me an
Mhm.
example for runtime exceptions?
Division by zero.
Okay. Can you give me an example for a compile time exception?
Uh, Compile time, maybe compile time. I mean, the ones which we write, maybe like uh, missing out super when we write the interface class, or missing out methods when we write user interface class. Like we are not supposed to write the body if we write the body for interface class when we are declaring.
Mhm. Interface class. If you're declaring, I didn't get you. Coming in.
When we write the interface class, we are supposed to write the function. If we write the function, then it's our fault. We are supposed to write the function in the extended subclass, implemented subclass.
Okay. So suppose if you are writing some text to a file, and what if the file is not found? So which kind of exception it comes under?
Runtime.
Runtime exception. Are you sure?
Yeah. I mean, we never know if the file is there or not. At runtime only we'll get to know, right? Oh, but you mean we have given the file in the, we have entered it, or in the program itself it was there
Yeah, I'm trying to
before
write
compile?
some data to a file, but the file is not there. So what kind of exception it throws?
I mean, if we are giving the file name in the program explicitly, then it would be compile time. Where if we are giving it right in the runtime, then it would be, it depends on the place we give, right?
So how do you give a file at runtime?
But the user can ask, like, enter the file name you wanna, drag the data from. Then we can enter it at the runtime in the, come in the prompt, whatever.
Okay, enter the file you want to. You
Get
have
the
such.
data from or something.
You want to read the data from.
Yes, yeah.
If you want to read the file, you are going to enter the file. So how you'll give the location of the file?
We can just type out the name of the file. But most of the programs I have seen, they have only written the program file name inside the compile time itself. Get the data from this file name. But generally in Python, everything we can give it out at the runtime.
Okay. 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 Basically, whenever you want to write some data, first we need to have that file, right? So the whatever you are storing, see there are why we are using files. We are using files to store the data permanently. We are storing the data permanently. We are storing the data permanently. If you want to store the data permanently, then we have to use a then we have to use file system, or then we are, or otherwise we have to use a database system, right? Otherwise, whatever
Mhm.
you see in the console, that is temporary. Am I right?
Okay.
If you want to store a data permanently, you have to
Mhm.
use IO classes. IO in the sense we have
Input out.
yeah, yeah, IO, all filter, file reader, file writer, all the classes. So
Mhm.
which are belonging to write data to a file or something else. If you want to write an Excel sheet also, you can write it. Or if you want to write the data to store permanently, we have data. Now, what if I'm trying to store values into the database, or I'm trying to store the values into the file? First, I need to get the file name. So that file name I'll be mentioning, I'll be maintaining over here only. In the application itself, I have to maintain that file name. So if the file name is not there, if the file, whatever you are specifying in the drive, if it is not there, so then it throws an error, that is compilation error. It is compilation. Anything not found means that is compilation. All the IO classes, input
Yeah.
output,
Okay. Mhm.
all the input output related things comes under IO exception zone.
So you mean the creation of file also should take place in the, compile time, near compile time.
Right.
Okay. But I can create file like, I can create outside Java program also. I can just create some 100 files locally and I can try to access only one file when I run the program.
When you run the program,
I can access one file to read the data from, but locally I have created some 100 or something. That is
yeah,
allowed, right?
you can read a file also. That's not a problem.
Mm.
Then what it comes under?
Still, it should be compile time because if I'm mentioning the file name in the program.
Okay. So any exception, that's clear. That's clear. So any exception, what you are finding related to input output, that is coming under IO exception. So that has been made by Java vendors, not us. That they have generated it as at the time of compilation, because before you are running application, when you run application, objects will be created and every process will be done. So before that only, we would like to identify all the database connectivity or all the file connectivity and all. So that's the reason they are raising at the time of programming compilation. So and by default, all the classes are which are direct subclasses of exception. All the classes which are direct subclasses, they are they are all checked exceptions are compile time exceptions, and all the exceptions which are not direct which are not direct classes and they are subclasses of runtime exception, they are runtime exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
So that means every runtime exception must and should be extended a runtime exception class. So this class will never be showing, but there is a class which will extend it internally.
Okay.
Are you getting me?
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, that is like that. Any class compile time exception is nothing but all the checked exceptions. What do you mean by
Okay.
checked exception? In the sense, checked exception is something which will be raised at the time of compilation and which are direct classes of exception. And before that, we have something called throwable. Throwable is a superclass for both exception and error. Your there is a superclass for all of them. Throwable. Throwable is a superclass for even for exception and for error. So, by
Okay.
errors we will not handle generally. Errors we don't want to get handled by the developers. They are by default some system problems or stack problems or any machine errors. If it comes, they are tracked it, they are maintained it as they are not coming under what do you say, exceptions, which are not in the hand of developers. So which actually basically need to be handled. The
Mm-hmm.
basically exception handled only runtime exceptions. Compile time exceptions also, they're not handled because they're files. You should make sure that the file is there or not. So runtime exceptions only we have to handle actually.
Okay.
Are you getting-
But the checked exceptions are in our hands, right? It is our fault
Yeah, it
that
is
we
in our.
didn't,
I'm sorry.
because we wrote the program, it is our see those things come in.
Yeah, that's what
Can
we
you give
should
me
make
one
sure.
checked example exception?
What I'm saying is, if you're writing some data to a file, being a that is our responsibility. Our responsibility to make sure that the file should be there. Yes or no? If I'm trying to upload a file, if the file is not there,
Yeah,
uh,
check checked is our fault. Unchecked is not our fault.
huh, unchecked runtime exceptions only we have to handle. I'm telling that unchecked exception only we have to handle. Unchecked means the developers or data input problems we will be getting. Are you getting me? Null pointer exception. Instead of number, they have entered something.
Mm,
That means that is an
yeah.
exception which should be handled. But file not find or
Mm,
database connectivity, it should not be related to the
okay.
not to be related to the user. Are you getting me?
Okay.
So what need to be the developer's hand means unchecked or runtime exceptions only should be we have to handle them, not the
Okay.
checked exceptions. That's the reason if you see anytime you'll never handle this SQL exception or class not found exception. You just declare them. Your method will declare. Did you see by using a throw keyword? Throws. I mean throws keyword will be throwing. Will not handle them.
Yeah.
Are you getting me? What I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Okay.
Which exceptions should be handled? Runtime exceptions only should be handled by the developer. So mission errors, out of memory errors are errors that is different. That is different part. Stack overflow error. So if you keep on infinite loop or something, stack overflow error, it will happen. Now your classes or database connectivity is not there means that is not a exception handling mechanism. That is something you should make sure before if I'm running an application, I should make sure whether the database is there or not. If the database is not there, I'm trying to connect to the Oracle database. That is an exception which should not be handled by the developer. Developer have to write a exception handling mechanism only for those exceptions which are responsible, like in the application level anything exists.
Mm,
Coding by, I mean the input levels. Are you getting me?
okay.
Hello?
Yeah, I get it.
You're getting me? Input levels I'm talking about. They
Okay.
might give different inputs. They may give invalid data. So these are all response. There are to handle this. as an exceptions, that is a responsibility of the developer. They may give such kind of input. They may give such kind of invalid input. In that case, all these things has to be thrown as an exception.
Mm-hmm.
But even we don't throw an exception. Why? We don't want to give to the client point of view. We should not give such kind of directly, hey, array index out of bound exception. Hey, directly index out of bound exception, because it doesn't know what is that exception is. We need to give a user friendly messages. That is by using try catch blocks we'll be maintaining.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting me?
Yeah.
So what need to be handled?
Unchecked exceptions.
Unchecked exceptions. Why not checked exceptions?
Because we'll just throw
We have to
and
declare them.
explain.
We have to declare. Why should we have to declare them? Because they are the things which need to be make sure. Are you getting me? Database connectivities or files, I need to make sure. Are you getting me? What I'm trying to say? In the developer
Mm-hmm.
points of view, what is need to be handled? Unchecked exceptions only. That's the
Okay.
reason for all the checked exceptions we will be declaring. We'll never handle. If you see any code, Java code, you'll not see like SQL exception. Manually, they don't write a code to handle that. They'll declare. If the
Yeah.
database connection is not only, it is only not there, what are the operations I need to perform? If you are going to ATM, if the server is not working, what are the operations I can perform? Are you getting me?
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting me?
Yeah.
That's a difference between checked and unchecked exceptions. Makes sense, Jyoti? You got something, so difference? What exactly what we
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
to handle?
Mm-hmm.
You getting my point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And error is something. It is irrecoverable or out of memory. And again, these are the faults. These are the problems, and which we it is like any physical interruption or any other thing comes under error. Okay, that is the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you handle the exceptions? Five
Using
keywords.
exception. Yeah.
There are five
Whatever we
keywords.
think will throw an error, we'll put it in the try block.
Right. Try. There are five keywords. Try, catch, finally, throw, throws. But the only way to handle is try and catch. Try and catch can only handle the exception. Throw and throws will not handle the exception. Are you getting me?
Mm-hmm.
The doubtful code I'll always write inside the try block. The doubtful code I'll always write inside the try block. And
Yes.
whatever has been raised in the try block will be handled by catch block.
Mm-hmm.
That means try and catch only the keywords who is responsible to handle the exceptions. And what are the remaining for? The remaining is for finally has its own purpose. If the exception raises or it doesn't raises, it will not it would like to execute some piece of code.
Mm-hmm.
Throw is
Then.
something, yeah, throw is something we don't want to handle an exception, we want to raise an exception. Wantedly you would like to raise an exception, that is throw.
Mm-hmm.
Throws is something you don't want to catch that exception at the moment. Throws will be propagating that exception to someone. It would
Okay.
like to say pass. So that means who is going to handle the real exception handling? How do you do? Only try catch. Then what are finally throw and throws? They are two. Therefore, they're for specific purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But the only methodology in Java to handle the exception is try and catch blocks only. Finally, block is an optional one. Depending upon you want to maintain compulsory, you want to execute something. Let's say try the exception got raised. My catch block is not the suitable one, but I want to make sure my database got connected. This fellow has gone with the ATM and he has tried to he's trying to withdraw money. After
Mm-hmm.
there are some mistakes will happen actually. So after he went, sometimes the money will come back. This is because they didn't maintain proper server disconnection. So after a certain time, it has to make sure that the disability with the database. That means it should not associate with the database. So for that, if anything goes wrong, who will make sure that finally block? That's the reason we'll maintain. We should make
Mm-hmm.
sure that at any cost, if anything goes wrong, it might be any other problem, my finally block should be executed. Due to the coding or due to something else, I should not, I should make sure that the opened database connectivity to be closed. That is the reason they have given finally block. You may handle or you may not handle, or it might be any other different exception. So for that reason, something mandatory code to be executed. If you have such kind of mandatory code, keep that code in the finally block. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And throw and throws we have. Throw is something is a keyword. So generally, I would say throw is useful for custom exceptions. Hope you are aware of what is a customized exception or custom exception.
Yeah, that we can write on our own.
So how do you create a custom exception? You have an idea?
Mm, like array out of bound is like predefined, whereas this we can write our own what we wanted to do using the exception keyword.
I'm sorry?
Like array out of bound exception, if we use those keywords in the catch block, they are like predefined. They only does, array out of bound or uh, in index out of bound exception. Whereas if we want to catch something new exception, then we will
Hmm.
explicitly mention it.
Did you create any custom exception class?
No.
Okay, so I'll tell you. So there is class called, see here, I have an example. Let's say in the example, I'm maintaining some age. If the age is greater than 18, I would like to say, hey, you are allowed to vote. If age is less than 18, I'm saying that you are not allowed to vote. This message I can give him directly to the client
Yeah.
or someone using. But instead of that, instead of throwing it as a message, I would like to give it as an exception. I would like to give as an exception class. So instead of if I give, I can see the message directly, so immediately then and there. But I wanted to generate it as an exception. Yes. How do you generate it as an exception? For that reason, what I'll do is I'll create a separate class. I'm creating a class called invalid age exception. And I'm saying that extends exception. I can extend any class. I can extend arithmetic class or I can extend runtime exception class, any class, because they are all subclasses of exception. It depends. It depends on like what kind of exception. But in general, we will make it as exception as a class. We have a choice to extend any class in the exception classes. But if I extend arithmetic or invalid age, means it is not related to array index or arithmetic mathematical. So it doesn't suit. So that's the reason I'm extending exception class. Now,
Mhm.
and I'm writing a constructor saying that if anything goes wrong, whatever the message I'm printing, throw this, throw that message as an exception, not a message, not a simple if or something else. So if you see here, after creating that, what I'm going to do is, if age is less than 18, I'm not saying SOP, system.out.println, but instead of that, I'm saying here throw new. I'm creating an object of a class. What is a class? Invalid exception, and also it is a constructor, and I'm passing a string. So this is how your throw keyword is useful. So throw keyword, I'm using it to raise the user defined exception.
Mhm.
So that means if the age is less than 18, it will throw an exception. Which one is that? Validate method. If I give some age from somewhere, so if I call the method, it's going to throw an exception if the age is less, saying that any message I can write it. You're not allowed to vote because your age is something else. Or else we can give some user-friendly message saying that you're allowed to vote. Okay, here we have raised the exception, that's fine. Here we have raised the exception. You are raising an exception. Being a developer, you're telling that if something goes wrong, I would like to raise the exception. Then only I'll use the throw keyword. Try and
Mm-hmm.
catch blocks are the only way to handle the exception. But throw and throws are not. They are either to raise an exception or to declare an exception. Now here,
Mm-hmm.
I'm raising an exception. Are you getting me?
Yeah. Yeah.
What am I doing is I'm raising an exception. So when I'm
Mm-hmm.
raising an exception, so because of this, the program execution stops. I don't have any other lines of code, of course, here. If I have any other lines of code, it will not execute. So then what I
Mm-hmm.
have to do, I'm raising an exception means if I'm not handling with a try catch block immediately, this method should declare that exception. I'm telling that, hey, if anything goes wrong in the code, in the code, if anything goes wrong, so please throw it. That means please propagate it to next level. Who is the
Okay.
next level? The calling time. We have the next level is calling time. I'm calling the method by passing some value. That means it's a last is a place where I have to handle my exception.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting me?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not handling the exception at the moment. So that means somewhere I need to handle. Where I have to handle? At least when you're calling. So that
Yeah.
means when I'm calling validate 13, so then it raises immediately an exception. And I got to know that if the exception raises, go to the catch block. And catch block says I'm ready to handle the exception. And what is the message? So whatever the message is there, it is going to print it. Are you getting me? And the rest of the code will be executed.
Mm,
Otherwise,
not
if you
valid.
just
Okay.
otherwise if you just call this method, only the exception will raises and it will terminate. So why do we have to handle the exception? The main purpose of exception handling is to continue with the rest of the code. To continue with the rest of the code. That's the reason we need to
Mm-hmm.
handle the exception. Any questions for me, Jyoti?
No, I'm good.
So you got the difference. What is the difference between throw and throws?
Uh-huh.
Throw is to raise an exception. It is
Yep.
better to raise a customized exception. Sir, instead of this, can I use my my predefined class? Yes, I can use arithmetic exception and say I can say some message.
Mm-hmm.
I can use arithmetic exception and I can say some other I can give some other message. But it is not suitable for age and if I say arithmetic exception, it doesn't make sense. So I would like to give my valid exception. That is my own
Yes.
class. My own class I have defined. That's the purpose of throw keyword. Throw is used to raise an exception and it is better to use for customized exceptions. And
Mm-hmm.
throws is a keyword not to handle the exception at the moment. Instead of that, we are saying pass on to the next level. So that means calling time at least calling time. Or someone is calling this method, so they can. Here I have another option. I can if I'm calling this method validate method in any other static method, that there I can redeclare. That means I don't need to catch over there. Are you getting me? Sometimes we'll call one method inside another method. At the moment, we can say redeclare there. So, but when you're calling that method, let's say validate to, at the time of calling that method, you need to surround with the try and catch block. Hope you got me clearly.
Yeah.
Any questions for me?
No, no, I'm good.
It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm not giving any examples. Hope still you can.
Yeah,
You're,
yeah,
you're
I got it. Yeah. I got it and I have gone through the examples.
fine. Any other questions you would like to ask me and exceptions?
Mm, I had one, but I just don't remember where I wrote it. I would ask in the next class. In the exceptions, I wrote one.
Huh.
I don't remember the question now. It's been
Okay.
2-3 days that I read this. I'll ask in the next class. I'll just go over again.
Sure, sure. Exceptions with Handling with method overriding in Java. Okay. So parent message we have, and your child class is extending parent class message we have, and we thought of it may throw IO exception. So that's the reason we are declaring, but your parent class method is not declaring that message. Your child class is declaring an exception. So in that case, it throws an error, it seems. If your parent class method is not declaring an exception, and if you're trying to what's that?
Call
Method does
override.
not declare an exception, subclass override and method cannot declare the checked exception. Superclass method does not declare an exception, subclass override and method cannot declare the exception. Superclass method, it's the same thing, right? We cannot declare. It might be checked or unchecked exception. But checked and unchecked exceptions, we are not allowed to declare like this. It is better to handle them programmatic approach, because they generally raise at the program implementation files, and these are all, they are better to declare. Checked exception is better to declare. Example, in case subclass override and method declare same exception. Yes. So throws exception, superclass same, and subclass same. Then that is okay. Child, it is printing child, and it works fine. Same, if it is same, that is fine. But high to low, you're coming exception and next to child. Arithmetic throws exception and arithmetic exception, which is under same category. Okay, this is also fine. Subclass override method declares no exception. Throws exception, this is not fine. This is also fine. Okay.
Output child, yeah.
Custom exception, anyway, you know that.
Mhm.
We don't need to talk about exception. Right. Let's see, inner class or multi-threading.
Inner class, I guess it nothing much is there. We can go with multi-threading.
Yeah. So what is a thread, Jyoti? What exactly is thread?
Thread is a lightweight process according to the main definition, but actually it's like it is a service provider. It
Okay.
provides some services and to the user, and all the threads together will run in the processor.
Okay. 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 Did you ever create any thread?
Yeah,
You have created?
yeah.
I mean, where you have created in any application?
Not in any application, just for when practicing it at the thread examples. For all the lifecycle methods, you do the new runnable. There I've used threads in order to check the lifecycle of threads.
Okay. There are some predefined threads in some applications. There are some. Did you work with servlets?
Uh-huh.
You work with servlet.
Mm-hmm.
So there we have threads concept. Do you know that you are aware of them?
I, I just need to recollect once. I have done servlets, but I just don't remember how these all were related. I mean, I
Okay.
remember doing threads, but I don't remember their practical application.
So basically, thread is nothing but a separate flow of execution. We say that a separate flow of execution, where is the separate flow of execution basically happens? The separate flow of execution happens in the process.
Mm-hmm.
We have an operating system. We have an operating system, and inside that we have a process, separate process. So all the objects basically will run in the process, but your thread inside the process, it creates a separate location. Are you getting me? So that's the reason we call them as thread is a separate flow of execution
Mhm.
inside a process. So why this concept they have been raised? They have raised to achieve multitasking. The purpose of thread is to achieve multitasking.
Mhm.
If I create a normal object, let's say when you're trying to book a flight tickets, so there are some people, some 5 people trying to book the flight ticket. That means each and we don't apply the threads concept. When you don't apply the threads concept, we cannot synchronize the object. But if I apply the threads concept,
Mhm.
I can maintain the synchronization. Synchronization is something who comes first, put a lock for them until they complete the task. You are not allowed to give the lock to other people. If 4 or 5 people are trying to book the ticket, after some time it will not take the people to direct gateway. So but before it goes to the gateway, it says that for someone it's got booked or confirmed.
Mhm.
So that's what will happen basically. That is because they have put a lock. You're not putting a lock. Has that application developed in such a way that who has come joined first, for them it will put a lock. So to develop such kind of locking system, we need multitasking. So to do that multitasking, we have to create multiple threads, not the same multiple objects. Your class should be separated from general objects that should be created as a thread objects. So these thread objects, we can we can create a communication between these thread objects. The thread has the power to communicate. They can come into understanding. But general objects, we cannot be able to put a lock onto them. We don't have such a facility. That's the reason they have created a separate concept called thread. Thread is a class. Thread is a predefined class, and it has its own process of execution. And there are two ways to create a class. Thread by
Extending thread
extending
class and runnable interface.
runnable interface. So which one is the best way to create a thread?
One more.
What do you think? Hello.
Extending the thread class and implementing the runnable interface.
Yeah, which one is
Can
the
you hear
best
me?
way? Which one is the best way to use that one, Jyoti? Extending or implementing?
So, implementing, we explicitly declare the class objects, right? I was thinking extending the thread class is simple.
Okay. So I say that implementing a runnable interface. So if I implement runnable interface, what happens is I can if I extend my thread class, then it will become a thread. Only it will become a thread. How many how many classes I have to create in such a way that I have multiple classes. So each and every time I have to extend a thread. But in my application, something that I have to extend some classes. There are some related classes. So in that case, extending thread class is failed. I mean, I'm not saying that it's completely wrong or something. So the added advantage comparing to the extending thread class, instead of sticking only extending one class, and if I have to use some other functionality, I'm not able to perform. That's the reason I'll go for implement. You know that you can implement multiple interfaces at a time. Am I right? So
Mhm.
even if I implement runnable interface, I have a chance to implement any other interface. I have a chance to implement any other interface. So that means it is giving me such a facility. Okay, so that I can, my class can become a thread, and also I can get some other functionality to be implemented. So that's the reason we can implement runnable interface, and again we can override only one method that is available, run method. I can override, and I have to, must and should have to implement only that particular run method. Only that method is available. So that that is the only method I have to do that. So that means if you implement runnable interface, that means it is becoming a thread, means it is wrong. If a class is implementing runnable interface, that means it is not a thread. And how can it will become a thread? I have to make it as, I have to create or I have to pass my, I have to pass that class to the thread class constructor. Then only it will become thread object. If my class is implementing runnable interface, it means that it is not my direct thread object. I have a flexibility. If I implement an interface, I have a flexibility to get add-on functionalities, but that is not actual thread object. Again, I need to pass your current class reference to the thread class object. Then only it will become a thread object. Otherwise, it is not a thread object.
Mhm.
Are you getting me?
Uh-huh.
Your thread class contains 22 methods, but your runnable interface contains one method. So if I want to use all the methods, the only mandatory method is run method.
Run.
So where you are going to write your implementation. Okay, so if you extend, it is a direct thread object. You can start it as a thread, because thread means it has its own functionality. It has its own functionality, its own way of implementation. That means its own life cycle it has. But your Java, when you implement runnable interface, you must and should have to create a thread, and then you have to pass your that particular object to the thread class. Then only it will become a thread.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not extending a thread class, your class object would not be treated as a thread. Here you can see the object. So you need to explicitly create a thread class object. We are passing the object your class that implements runnable, so that your class run method may execute.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting me? If you say
Mm-hmm.
t1.start, then it will call the run method. Otherwise, it will be, if I have to call directly run method. Directly I have to call run method. So to make it again as a thread based, I have to perform. So these are the two ways they have given. So depending upon your usage, we will be going it.
Mm-hmm.
So you know anyway the life cycle of a thread.
Yeah. New runnable running terminate blocked terminated.
So what is a thread scheduler? Did you ever schedule your thread? This
Yeah, using that time we can that primitive scheduling and all comes over here, right?
preemptive schedule.
We can assign like each time, like if it is uh, like each process get equal amount of time or it's the priority one.
We are going to set the priorities.
Prior. Okay.
Kind of preemptive scheduling and time slicing. Okay, we'll come back here anyway. Priority we have in the next sessions. So sleeping a
Okay.
thread, anyway, sleeping
We
means
can
we will
stop. Yeah,
make
the thread
and
can stop for some amount of time that we explicitly mentioned.
that means we are making it to making for runnable state to non-running state.
Mm-hmm.
If you call sleep method, it goes into runnable to normal, and after certain time, it automatically gets wake up and it will run back again. You are aware of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So starting a thread twice, what will happen when you start thrice? So
I don't
already
think it's wrong.
it throws an exception.
Okay.
The time of running, when the program running, it throws an exception, illegal thread state. It's not a compile time exception, it is a runtime exception. What happens when you call a run method? If you call run method, that would be treated as a normal method. It is not a thread method. If you want to work, if you after creating object, you have to say t1.start. If you say run, it treats as a normal method.
Mm-hmm.
Joining a thread. What do you mean by joining a thread? So I would like to say I have three objects of that same class, and these three objects are trying to access some method. The method of that, or they would like to execute some piece of code, or they would like to call this run method whereby I have executable logic. So when three threads are working, and I have such a thing like sleep or something, or I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
have sleep.
Join. Yeah. I remember this. Join. Yeah. So after T1 is done, only T2 and T3 can start, right?
Yeah, it will give the access until the first thread complete. It will
Mm-hmm.
not give the access to the second thread. So when T1 dot join, I say T1 says that, hey, join after me. Until I complete, you are not allowed to. So as it is, you are interrupting the running thread you are supposed to keep inside try catch block. So whenever you are using thread.sleep or join or notify or
Mm-hmm.
something, wait, so you are interrupting the running thread. So it may throw an exception. That's the reason they made it mandatory to keep inside try catch block. Are you getting
Mm-hmm.
me? So can you
Mm-hmm.
name a thread? Yes, we can name a thread. So you can name your current thread. We have
Get name, set name. Set name. Yeah.
that's priority. We have priorities in general, three types of priorities: minimum, maximum, and normal priority. Your
Mm-hmm.
minimum priority starts from 1, and your normal priority that is 5, and maximum priority is
10.
10. So we can schedule which one should be the first, which one should be the next, and which one should be the last. So for that reason, we can set the priorities. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
this is very
Lowest
important demo.
priority thread.
I'm sorry.
It is the lowest priority thread.
Yeah. So demo thread, you are aware of it?
Uh-huh.
It's lowest priority. Demo thread.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that, Jyoti?
It's the very last.
The very last. Why we have a demo thread? Why we made it, they made it as a demo? Can we create a
Maybe,
demo thread?
yeah, we can. We can
Okay.
say, we can change it if we feel some process is not necessary or it can wait till then, we can put it as, daemon thread.
Do we have any demo threads in Java?
Yeah, but I don't remember what. Maybe final block.
Your
Final,
garbage
yeah,
collector. You know garbage collector?
can be
Garbage collector
considered.
system.gc. So when you say gc system.gc, it
Garbage collector. Oh, yeah.
that's a demo thread. It runs.
Yeah.
It runs after your programming execution to sweep out remaining objects, and then it will die.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting me? So the amount thread also
Mm-hmm.
will be deleted but until if it has some task, until it will be alive until the remaining threads should expire to be garbage collected.
Mm-hmm.
The example is your GC garbage collector is the daemon thread. There are several daemon threads which will be there. An application will discuss all of them. So garbage collector is one of the daemon thread where it will work at the back end to remove all the objects.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting me? So thread pool or thread group. So these are all the things. Garbage collection. Yeah, garbage collection is here. Directly I'm going here. Garbage collection is
Mm-hmm.
more efficient. Hello.
Uh-huh.
This we'll discuss in the next session now, Jyoti. Okay.
Which from the
Demon threads and all the remain in this garbage collection and all. Okay.
okay,
This is a thread group and thread pool also. We'll discuss
okay,
in the next. Huh?
okay, okay.
So far, any questions for me so far?
No, no,
Any other things you would like to ask?
nothing. So next class will be Monday, right?
Yeah, Monday.
Okay. So
Okay.
we'll go ahead with garbage and then synchronization.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jyoti. Thank you.